Smart 24, driving business.
We'll be back from the break, and you're still watching the Policon, where we discuss politics and economic matters. And of course, today we are assessing, the NRM Manifesto, or looking at its implementation, what has been implemented so far, how has it fared, how has it impacted the Ugandans, and of course looking at a few things that have affected you and how the government is looking forward to at least highlighting the key lessons, and as well trying to find solutions for these particular changes in the same situation. But well, as we continue to give you more of this, allow me to at least take you back a little bit of our kind of discussion that we had in the first part. Our discussions was rotating around the first few years of the implementation, 2 years. So it's so far 2.5 years. So when you look at that, it is something that we should as well be in sync with as we continue with our conversations here. And of course, I'm still with Mr. Willis Bashasha, who is the Director Manifestation at the Manifesto Implementation Unit. And of course, we are going hard in understanding more of the same. Well, Mr. Bashasha, when you come to think of it here, is there any collaboration and coordination between you and the private sector or the civil society organizations? Have they helped you in any way in order to at least implement the NRM Manifesto?
Well, I will say that, first of all, from a macroeconomic perspective, that this is a private sector-led economy. So, and the role of government is also to create an enabling environment for the citizens and any other players to do their part. The private sector definitely has a very big role to play. We have all these interventions which cannot be done by government. In fact, we have what we call force account. That's a term that is used on where government is participating in any of these contractual obligations. But most of the work, whether it's construction of the infrastructure, whether it is provision of services, has been done by the private sector. So it has a very big role to play. And I think in this respect, there are also interventions that are being proposed by the government to support, like the proposals of capitalizing Uganda Development Bank so that people can be able to access long-term financing at a cheap cost. We are looking at policy frameworks and legislation frameworks that support whatever ideas that are being proposed and how they should be implemented. We also have other interventions, if they are done, that they should be able to reduce the cost of doing business in the country. You have seen where we are proposing that we need to do like a railway to restore the railway transport so that the goods can be freighted here at a very cheap cost. So all those reducing cost of business through managing cost of cost of capital, and then this freight is very, very important. Ideas like extending electricity almost every corner of the country. That means you are promoting investments, not to be in one area, but also to spread over across the country. So, to me, I think the government's role is to put in place policies and mechanisms that allow the private sector to do its business. Of course, they also have their challenges. They have been talking about taxes. They have also raised the issues of when these roads are washed away, it affects them, and cost of capital, especially the SMEs. This is largely an SME economy, and these people need to be supported. But government has put in place support in this direction. Yeah.
Okay.
And then you raised the issue of what? Was it civil society?
Yes, civil society.
Yeah, civil society also, you know, they are like another estate of government. So they help to keep government in check for those which have been very proactive. You know, I don't know why civil society tends to behave as if it's reactionary
To everything,
to everything. Whereas, yes, we can work with civil society in a proactive manner. We have areas of concern, even at the manifesto level, like zero tolerance to corruption. Would want to see this manifesto being implemented where necessary. But if you have such a challenge, we could also be having some governance challenges. And I think civil society has also tried to come like a check to the way maybe some of these businesses or deliverables are run. And where they have been very positive, the government has also intervened and reacted or tried to look at the areas they are raising, like issues of human rights, you know, issues of corruption, issues of democracy. I think civil society has also played its part. The only challenge I think I see is where they tend to go extreme, as if they are not citizens of this country. But short of that, I think they also have a role to play in as far as government agenda is concerned.
Well, when you look at the start of every manifesto, the government always outlines the ambitious targets and goals, and how realistic and achievable have some of these goals been, and how realistic are the rest going to be achieved?
Yeah, I will say that, like you rightly observed, on the onset, these are intentions, strategic intents of how the country can move forward, and they are always assessments, maybe based on the previous performances.
True.
And there could be also emerging issues which need attention as we take over government. So it is true, and when I talk about planning. Sometimes it's not true that all the plans you have will be realized. We definitely suffer some setbacks along the way because either of unpredictable conditions or challenges like economic setbacks where the mobilization of resources were not adequate to meet what probably we thought. Some could be where even the negotiations in terms of getting this financing may take longer. And you find that even the proposals you had, I will give you an example like SGR, up to now we have never concluded the FDI, the financial final the investment decision, FID. Now, because of, you know, a few other, some could be affected by global events, you know. So the realism vis-a-vis expectations is always a challenge. But as a government, what is important is to keep committed to making sure that those deliverables are delivered on.
Okay.
Yeah.
And well, have there been any mid-course corrections in regards to adjustments made by the government in the implementation strategy? For example, in case of any kind of setbacks you've been able to receive during the first 2 years?
Not at the moment. I can only say maybe we are experiencing slow progress because of the challenges we started with, the COVID issues, Russian war, Ukraine-Russia war, and the rest of other global challenges. However, you find that these commitments, since they are well planned for and probably provided for in the budget framework, some resources could have been provided, but they are not adequate. So it's not very easy at the moment to say maybe we will not be able to achieve this.
Yes.
But we can now say that depending on the resource allocation, the percentages of how the budget has been allocated and how budget has performed, we may not be, we don't know whether at this space if we will be able to deliver on this. But now is our predictions, like the President was saying in the State of the Nation address, if we are able to achieve that 7% growth because of the other factors at play, we would be able to meet enough resource to move ahead with our commitments. But I also want to say that not all what we predict is concluded for those reasons. And some projects even outlive the term.
Okay.
Yeah, you'll find that the shelf life of these projects or the progress is much more than the term. Take an example, like you want to put a dam for purposes of generating electricity. The negotiations alone or sourcing of financing would take like 3 years. Now, if a term is 5 years, by the time you start implementing that very project, you are either in the 4th year or the 5th year. Okay. You have seen these ideas of the pipeline, the oil and gas projects. These were initiated right away in the last term. But because of these factors, now that is the time we are now.
You're now reaping
yes,
on
exactly.
on
but
the
they keep in the plan. They
okay.
keep in the plan, and the government keeps focused.
Challenges. You mentioned challenges. Are there internal challenges here and there? Because when you talk about the Ukraine-Russia war, COVID, I want to believe those were more external.
Yeah.
Until we started feeling them directly.
Exactly.
When you come to think of the other challenges that are internal, what are those?
The starting one is what we have been discussing, the issue of the resource envelope, vis-a-vis the scope of the manifesto. So you'll find that domestically we may not be able to finance, and this requires external financing. And like I said, this is not money that is there where you enter and just
speak. Yeah.
So the second one is the issue also of corruption, where maybe even the little
that we have someone other people are misusing
utilized effectively, value for money, that kind of stuff. Then the other issue is the mindset also for Ugandans, how people tend to perceive about these programs, and you find that people are not readily set to participate in this program, inclusive of the politics, the politicization, some of these programs. So the uptake on the onset seems to be slow, and largely because of the mindset. And this mindset problem is not only with the people that we lead, even us at this level. The mindset problem must be solved. And this builds also into the patriotism of the country. How do we love our country irrespective of the political differences? So we have another challenge of where, for political reasons, or where people keep demanding services nearer to the people, and this leads to creation of new administrative units. Now, these units, as they are being created in the course of the term, they also distort planning and resource availability, because they impact negatively because you are now expanding what you need to deliver on, working within the very same basket of resources available. The other one is what I've talked about, the lengthy procurement processes of given projects by their nature, and you find that this impacts negatively, because if the procurement is taking just 3 years of a given infrastructure project, then that's a problem. Then I think the last one, which is also major, is the issue of land. Okay. You know, land is a constitutional issue here in this country, and then all these projects we are talking about of infrastructure nature, which requires moving water, construction of roads, moving electricity, moving internet, and the rest of the ICT-related development, all these will be passing through land. And at the moment, government doesn't have what you'd call right-of-way corridors, so that if we are saying we are tomorrow we are building railway, this is already a secured right-of-way for the railway. If we are moving water, this has been planned and secured. So that will require acquisition of land, and we have had a lot of hitches along that. First of all, people inflating the cost. Secondly, the land tenure system, which may also has its own issues. You know, land in this country has become more political than a factor of production. Then through that, then you have now procurement-related issues. Then through procurement, you have arbitration and litigations. All these end up delaying and also increase the cost the cost per unit of achieving this. That's why some people are complaining, why are roads expensive in Uganda? To construct a road is expensive in Uganda than these other countries. But where land is owned by the state, it's much cheaper because you just need to mobilize the contractors.
And then the works are done.
Yeah, you hand over.
Yes. It brings me to the response. How has the government responded to some of these challenges?
Yeah, some have, of course, necessitated some reviews of the laws, existing laws and policies. You know, at one point there was also the need for constitutional review to address the land issue, but you know how sensitive the issue of land is. So I think they are also trying to look at the existing laws about this acquisition of land so that we can, at the moment, work within those. The same has been done through the PPDA Act to help in the faster procurement processes and also to minimize litigations that are unnecessary. Or if they are to be, let's allow business or projects to continue as we are being sorted in the courts of law, you know, that kind of stuff. But also sometimes you find that the laws may require certain deposits of certain amounts so that these cases are listened to. All that affects the what? The economy and the implementation process. So laws and policies that govern some of these things are being reviewed. You have seen also government very, very serious in fighting corruption, much as we have not gotten where we want. So government is not sleeping. And I think there is now a moratorium on the creation of new administrative units, which also helps in that direction of having so many units being created mid-term. So we hope by intervening through these proposals that are being addressed, we should be able to see a smoother and faster way of realizing our intended objectives within this manifesto.
Okay, the international community, or what we could call the external forces that have always been helpful to our government for the past years, that is since time immemorial, I should say. But when you look at the implementation of the NRM manifesto, has there been any initiatives that have been supported by the international community? For example, maybe the donor fundings and of course other international organizations funding in specific programs?
Yeah. That one is not in question because, like I told you, our resource envelope has never been enough.
So we always have to get at least
so we have
external
to borrow. Sometimes we get loans, sometimes we get grants that can be supportive in these deliberate efforts we want to realize. But I would also say that the government of Uganda has also tried to improve on the administration of its revenue so that we can be able to rise our pass and be able, and I will tell you that there are so many roads in this country which have been rehabilitated, maintained, and even constructed using Uganda funds, which is a very, very positive step towards independence of the country.
Okay, industrialization is something that has picked up since 2016, I should say. I think it takes us back to what you've mentioned, that at times we set the manifesto not to be done in the first 5 years, but at least we set a foundation, or you are setting a foundation that is going to be that is actually going to be left for ages. Now, when you look at industrialization, this has led to the rise of quite a number of led to the rise of our manufacturing sector, if I am to say. What do you think has boosted these industries that are rising here and there, because they're creating some huge employment opportunities for the Ugandans now?
Of course, it is about first the prudent management of the economy, because you have to what are your macroeconomic indicators to attract those investments. There has to be some sacrifice here and there, trade-offs for purposes of attracting these industries and manufacturers to get here. The issue of power, the country has moved great strides in making sure we have enough power to support any kind of industry here. We've been talking of infrastructure, the roads that have been made. People need to move their logistics and raw materials to these places. Security, which is very, very fundamental and the bedrock of all these things we are talking about. So it is true But we can also categorize and say that this is what you would call maybe grade A manufacturing. But we are also seeing another level of the agro processing, the value addition at these levels where some people can be able to turn their bananas into wine, their oranges into juice at that level. And we can see even some of these products, those which have already passed the Q mark of UNBS, are part of the shelves in our supermarkets. So, and it is the wish of government that as we bring more people into the cash economy, into the service industry, then we should be seeing less of them staying in agriculture, and then many supporting, of course, as they get more skilled and maybe invest in some of these areas we are talking about. Now they can go into manufacturing, we go into industry, we go into more service sector, and then we leave agriculture for a few. And then most of these other citizens shift into those other sectors, ICT, service, and manufacturing.
Okay. Well, security is a very huge fundamental aspect in any economy. And ours, per se, the reason as to why we are seeing all these economic strides is backed by the safe security and all that. But for a few cases, you realize at times our security internally is a bit affected by some case scenarios that happen here and there. How is the government planning to respond to some of these?
Like you say, these are incidents. But large and by, the country is very secure. There is no war anywhere in the part of this country. These incidents you are saying, you can say these are isolated.
That happened.
That happened, and they are part of every society. Even in the developed world, you have this business of abuse of gun control and the rest of these things. So, and the government has not been lying in slumber. We have seen so many arrests being made against some of these terrorists who have been trying to cause incursions here. This issue of the urban crime, you can see even the role of the cameras when the cameras were introduced.
That identify,
and how they are able to assist those who are in the investigations and the tracking of these criminals. And you see, as society grows, so is crime. So what we need as a country is now probably to build the capacity to be able to manage the level of crimes. Now we have a challenge of cyber, people hacking into mobile phones of these citizens. Since now
the transactions
mobile
online,
platform
yes,
is really another player in the deepening of financial inclusion. So you have people hacking banks. So these are issues that now we need a competent human resource that can be able to manage this, and how we are able to deal with this, either by creating more secure data centers where this information, in case of any disaster, we are able to come back to the game, something like that. So, to me, I think security is very key, and government every other time, training, recruitment, further professionalization in all the sectors that touch security has been done. Acquisition of modern ways and the technology of dealing with some of these problems is invested in. But like I said, these criminals also don't sleep, would want to stay on top of whatever government is doing. Yeah.
So they always come up with other skills,
something like that, and it could be a challenge now to the whole security setup, and then it needs now probably a new approach to how to deal with it.
Okay. Well, to cap lots of other cases of security, of course, the government, like Mr. Wills Bashash has mentioned here, is that the government is making various strides to ensure that at least the country continues to be very peaceful as it has been for the last 30 years and more. And of course, ever since the NRM government took over. But well, last part of the discussion of the show is coming back after the break, as we'll be summing up. And this time on, we're going to be looking at the future and the projections and what other, the lessons that we've learned from the past few manifestos and how we've been able to build on top of that. And also looking at how we shall be able to understand the dissemination process by the government in relation to the manifesto and ensuring that the citizens in Uganda get to understand what the NRM government is pushing into the agenda of making sure that we as the Ugandan people can secure our future financially, socially, and politically in that aspect. Well, you're still watching the Policon, where we discuss politics and economics. When we return, we are summing up with our show, but more of the conversations here, you can find them on our YouTube channel in case you missed where we had started from.